it's obviously not just a tools problem. Like it's a tools problem, it's a process problem, it's a habits problem. And if you don't pay attention to all three of those, then you'll just keep doing the same dance of switching tools when the next shiny thing comes out and says, we'll solve all your problems. Like I'm sure that the number of PM tools that have gotten built by teams running on Jira to build them and then go build a competitor is like Jira's got to be the largest, I would assume.
That's a good irony right there.
I'm all in on AI and where it's going. I just hate the buzz around it. And like this is cover for us to go increase our ARPU as a software company. So
100%, I agree. It's like these companies are just like, oh, everybody's doing it. We have to do something with AI.
Right.
Let's just throw something in there. Thanks for being here. Appreciate your time. My first question is, what drew you to ClickUp initially? And I asked this question to all my other guests, which are usually Jira people. So I'm curious how this answer will be different from them.
Yeah. We built a project management tool for agencies. Specifically, it was called Do Inbound. So like 2013 to 2017, we were building and growing that. We had a very strong opinion on like agencies really investing in process as part of making project management work for them. So we had a really opinionated software, which is great when customers had strong processes and got used to it, and super high churn when they didn't. So we were a little over 500 agency customers and trying to figure out like, hey, are we going to keep cranking down the software path? Or what we're getting a lot of traction for now is agencies needing our help building out their processes and improving how they operate. So we wound up pivoting and having to make a decision. There's a whole long story there, but we had to make a decision about, hey, what tool are we going to wind up support? Are we going to support all the tools? Are we going to support a single tool? We wanted to support a single tool and went through. We've got a post on the ZenPilot site from back in the day going through like 71 different PM tools, obviously Jira included, Trello on that list too. And ultimately wound up picking ClickUp for three core reasons. One was just the flexibility. So like Jira at the time, you could have things in Kanban view. You could have a list view. You couldn't see the same data in like two different views. So the flexibility of views and customization at that point in time, like that was one of ClickUp's big innovations that they brought. And now every tool pretty much has that. Second piece was just development velocity, like how fast they were improving the platform. And that has really kind of surprisingly and pleasantly surprisingly stayed true to today. And then the third big piece was the depth of the hierarchy in ClickUp. Going a lot deeper, we can dig into that if that's worth spending time on. But it was really well suited for a client service business where it's not just departments and projects, but departments and then clients and then projects or campaigns, projects, deliverables, tasks. So the depth of the hierarchy in ClickUp suited that really well as well.
Interesting. So this was years ago. And to be honest, I don't think Jira had a good solution for general project management until like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I think it's only now like pretty good. So the state that it was in then was like very engineering, software development team focused. Is that kind of what drew you away from Jira immediately?
No, I mean, we were building project management software. Like I'm sure that the number of PM tools that have gotten built by teams running on Jira to build them and then go build a competitor is like Jira's got to be the largest, I would assume.
That's a good irony right there.
That's what they were known for. And you're right, like all the rest of the pain points of, hey, it works great for our development team or our product teams, and everyone else hates it. And so we wind up living in these siloed ecosystems. Like that is a huge pain point. That's why a lot of teams have, switched off, and other teams have like there's trade-offs either way. So Jira was definitely still like that didn't scare us off at all. We used it as we were building our software. But there were enough things that were like that we didn't like about it. The flexibility, the speed at the time was an issue with it, like the complexity of getting new users up and onto it. It was a pretty intimidating tool if you weren't coming from a background where you're kind of forced into it back at the time.
Yeah. How familiar are you with like Jira in today's current landscape and like how it's used?
I'm a lot less familiar than I was 2017 or 2018. I was looking back through this. So this year, so far, we've got about a dozen clients who we've helped migrate off of Jira so who are leaving the platform. All time, there's a couple hundred folks who've come over. But I'm just less involved in the delivery side. So I do this is probably not a good trait to have. Um, but there are some benefits to it. Like I love nerding out on these tools. So I do pay attention. I'm subscribed to all the release logs and look at like, hey, what's happening, and updates them with the product. But in terms of actually running a project on Jira, I haven't run a project on Jira in years. So you're way more up to speed on that front than I am for sure.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm curious to know what kind of teams, maybe similar attributes, go from Jira to ClickUp, because we have some of that too, where teams go from ClickUp to Jira.
That's Jira for
And
sure.
yeah, I'm sure there's like certain key things. Like for us, it's usually slightly larger organizations, very engineering and dev heavy most of the time. So I'm curious
Yep.
if there's anything like that on the reverse.
For sure. We see that like the most common use case is well, there's probably like three main buckets that people fall into, but the most common one is, hey, we did have or we still do have a strong dev side. They were all in on Jira. That's why we sucked everyone else into it. But we want a lot of the benefits and features that ClickUp offers for other teams, and there's no way we can actually do the right kind of resource planning, capacity planning, workload management if we don't have some single source of truth somewhere. So that's like far and away the largest segment of folks are just saying, I can't live any longer having my team sit in two different systems. Like we've got to get on somewhere.
Mm-hmm. So the biggest pain point sounds like it's just multiple tools, multiple teams using different things, and there's just no unified way of working.
Yeah, I think that's certainly the big one. And I think what's cool about this space is like both things are happening. Jira is getting a lot better at solving for the non-dev teams, which is awesome, and ClickUp's gotten a lot better at solving for them.
Mm-hmm.
So the probably the second bucket of folks are the folks who are saying, okay, like we've gone through this dance enough times. We've switched between tools every 2 years for the last 15 years. And we're ready to stop doing that. So we realize this is more than just a tool problem. Like, I gave a talk this spring to a bunch of agencies down in Florida, and it was I was pulling on these lessons. The talk was like 7 lessons from 8 and 9 figure agencies, and looking at these 43 agencies that I've worked with who are doing between 10 million and 700 million and in revenue. And as we started, like when I started working with each of those teams, there were teams that were on Monday, teams on ClickUp, teams on Jira, teams on like all these different platforms. So obviously that's not one of the commonalities of what allows you to scale is, oh, we have to be on this specific tool. So the whole solution here is obviously is like, as you know super well, it's obviously not just a tools problem. Like it's a tools problem, it's a process problem, it's a habits problem. And if you don't pay attention to all three of those, then you'll just keep doing the same dance of switching tools when the next shiny thing comes out and says, we'll solve all your problems.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because that's exactly what I always say, but I never say it's a habits problem. So that's very interesting. So are you just basically saying that the teams that are using these tools run into like these very specific ways of working and it's hard to break out of that?
They definitely. I think the problem is not necessarily that people like everybody's got habits, so it's not like zero habits. It's just, and sometimes they're even like decent habits to have, or like there's always bad habits tied in. Like we never audited a team and not found some bad habits, but sometimes those habits would be fine. It's just two totally different ways of working. So if you're trying to do your capacity planning with points and I'm trying to do mine with hours, and we somehow decide we need to mix and match those, like that's just a hard thing to solve for. So we've got to figure out, well, what's the solution? Like, can we live in two separate capacity planning worlds with our standard unit of measure? Or do we need to get on the same page somehow and have some translation layer, which is fine if we do. That just means there's a little bit more admin cost or overhead to figure out and solve for that. So I think that's the big habits piece is it's not just like instilling better habits. It's also just, can everyone operate? There's plenty of room. I'm totally fine with our designers and developers hating to see things in a list view. They just want to see things on a board or Kanban.
Mm-hmm.
And with project managers being like, give me all the data, give me the spreadsheet table list type view. That's totally fine. That's a preference I don't care about. But then there's beneath that, there's a layer of stuff that we all have to be on the same page about and say, this is how our organization actually operates together. We have to have a standard project management methodology for the core stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Do you ever look at the landscape of project management tools and all the things out there, the new features that are releasing, especially with the AI stuff, and think like, man, I wish we were running that platform instead of ClickUp? Does that ever happen to you?
For sure. Yeah. I don't feel it as much today as I used to, where it was like, oh man, like Notion's got mail. Like, boy, this would be sweet if we could have like mail or what. Like there's things that you look at and you're like, that'd be awesome. I don't look at it as much maybe like jealously today as I do. There's an element of that, like, oh, I can't wait till ClickUp has this. And I'm not married. Like, I'm here to serve our clients who are professional service firms, normally between 10 and 200 people. There's outliers from that. Obviously, a high percentage of those in the agent marketing or digital agency space. I'm here to serve them. And so that's who I'm solving for. So I want to use the best platform because we need to be experts at it. Like, we've got to focus in on one tool. It's impossible to keep up with 10 different tools and actually be awesome at it. So I want to use one tool. So I'm just trying to maximize for like, what's the best tool for this specific use case most of the time, so that I can get obviously I can have as large of a addressable market as possible without sacrificing on, hey, we need some focus somewhere. So if Jira was the better tool for those folks most of the time, like, and I was convinced of that, then we would switch our business and go service on Jira. But today, so I view that a little bit more today, like, this is great. This is pushing the whole industry forward. ClickUp, huge competitive advantage. It was so easy to sell to teams, 7 years ago, saying, look, Asana, you have to pick, you want a list view or you want a board view. ClickUp, it's the same data, visualize it however you want. That's ubiquitous. Every tool has that today. So that's no longer a selling point. That's a great contribution that ClickUp made to this app ecosystem. Jira, for a number of years, had, if you were running a development team, you were running in sprints, and you're trying to have, how do our epics and stories and like all this stuff tied together, that was the platform. Now a lot of that competitive advantage is gone. It's still a great platform, but a lot of other tools have taken that. That was Jira's like one of their big contributions to the space. So I view it more as like a or at least some element of me, and the majority of me now is like, that is cool. I'm glad this is coming out. If this sticks and is done well, everyone else now has the playbook to go make their platform better as well.
That's true. I noticed that a lot with, like, if I look at Notion and Confluence, they have a lot of similar traits, and a lot of the stuff that Notion puts out, Confluence sort of ends up adopting over time. For example,
Right.
databases is like a huge one that they're pushing towards right now. And that obviously came directly from Notion. Everybody loves that in Notion. And now we have that in
Yep.
Confluence. So love that perspective of like, one company does it. It's kind of like the tech industry. You have Apple and Android and all those other
Right.
companies. If Apple does something, they'll probably all copy Apple, and then vice versa.
Yeah.
So it is good for everyone, good for us as the users as well, with all that competition being there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's like the huge benefit of the market, is just that opportunity for everything to get better.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious about I saw not long, maybe a year ago or so, ClickUp had the Slack alternative come out. Is that something you use or recommend using? I'm curious how good that is.
Yeah. If we were talking 6 months ago, I'd be like, hey, hold off for now. We switched our whole team over to it in Q2 after putting it off and being like, this isn't good enough. I mean, we were working with all of our clients in Slack. And I still have a lot of affinity for the Slack brand and product. I thought with ClickUp Chat, you don't know for sure when a company puts out a feature, whether it's just a parody feature, like, hey, now we can check the box and say that we do it too, or if they're actually serious about it and it working well. ClickUp has invested way heavier than they needed to check the box and say we do it. And that's ultimately why we switched over to it, was it checked enough of the boxes now for us to move. I don't recommend it across the board. I do think for most teams, the huge advantage that you unlock is like, all of our data is in here. It's super easy to tie in tasks, create tasks from messages. There's plenty of workarounds to go do that, but like, all the data is in one system, which is huge. So we're operating better today with chat than we were with Slack. But for us, we have this really nice selection bias, which is if you're going to work with us, you're trying to learn ClickUp. So when I say, hey, you have to work with me in ClickUp Chat, you're like, yeah, of course, we'll learn ClickUp. If I was running one of our client firms, like I'm a marketing agency, and our clients could care less about ClickUp and they're already running on Slack, the Slack Connect feature is so killer that it'd be really hard to say, yeah, well, now you have to log into this other platform that you never use except to communicate with me. So I think that's still, I mean, the two big competitive advantages to Slack today. If you just look at the products, do we have reminders and, channel, like a lot of the stuff is similar, but Slack Connect and their install base is a huge competitive advantage for Slack. So that's probably the number one reason why most teams would not move over today. And maybe that'll change down the road as ClickUp gets more adopted. This could all change, but just today, I think it's true. And the second thing is just the app ecosystem. All the tools that plug in and push data. Like we had 40 different apps pushing data into Slack. Now that's about 15, and we had to just prioritize and say, hey, we have to go build most of these connectors ourselves to push this data in. What do we really care about? And it's, good that there were things that we were able to cut off that list, but you're inviting some more development and maintenance time until those connectors get built out in the ClickUp ecosystem.
Interesting. Do you think that'll ever happen and there's actually going to be legitimate adoption for it, similar to Slack?
The adoption numbers so far are pretty strong with chat, but I think the connect piece has to be like, I don't see how that's not years away from it being like, oh yeah, a ton of us have ClickUp, and so it's no problem to go work there. It seems like the shorter term move to solve for that would be some way that I can work in ClickUp, you can work in Slack, but we can message through each of our respective platforms. And so I don't know how, I haven't seen anybody. Can you think of anybody who's done that super well?
I have never used them. I've seen a couple that I've debated on using, but never actually tried them.
Yeah. I've used text.com, Beeper.
I've used Beeper, yeah.
So some of those apps that like pull a bunch of things together, but even that, sometimes there's like, oh, the channel didn't connect, or like you got to re-authenticate or something. It's not as seamless. So anyways, I don't know how soon that'll happen. I do think, ClickUp, who knows where the industry goes. ClickUp's on a strong growth trajectory. So I do think they're like the use case and the connectivity between teams using it, that will for sure get better. I just don't know if it's ever at the scale, or at what point it's at the scale. Well, really, if ever it's at the scale of what Slack has done so far.
If you're like me, you've probably deleted a Jira work item by accident, and then you realize that there's no way to get it back. Happens to the best of us, and that's why I want to share one quick tip. Always have a backup. Trust me, I've seen too many teams learn this the hard way. Our partner, GitProtect.io, makes this simple. It's a reliable backup solution for Jira that protects your work so mistakes don't turn into disasters. Check them out at GitProtect.io. Where do you think the industry is headed as a whole in this space? Is it towards that one tool does everything, kind of like ClickUp is doing, or more so like there's different tools that specialize in very specific things, but do it extremely well?
Yeah. I have no idea. I do think like we see OpenAI and the connectors, and like we'll for sure 6 months from now, a year from now, be able to execute so much work directly out of our chat platforms. And at some point, I don't know how long, website chat became a big thing, probably like 7 or 8 years ago too. And Drift was like, no more forums, everything's going to be chat. And I was like, I hate the chat interface. I don't want to wait for a fake thing on like a computer on the other end to have a ... and then take 20 seconds to send me something that they could send me in 1 second. Like, don't pretend that this is happening. But there was a huge wave towards it and a lot of energy and momentum going that way. So I don't know how long the chat interface, and then that kind of died out, and we went back to some forums, and like chat didn't take off the way that everyone thought it would initially. But now we're back to chat with the AI tools. And so I don't know what the interface, like I would assume we're going to see more diversity of the interfaces, where not everything is through a chat application. But I don't know what that's going to look like long term. And then really, if those can connect super well and all these tools can talk to each other, then we can pull together a bunch of different features. I think all in all, I think it'll wind up feeling more like a single tool, even if it's not a single tool, if that makes any sense. So like you still might use ClickUp on the back end, but you might be interfacing primarily with it through Gemini or through OpenAI or through Claude or something. And so it may feel mostly like a single source, but it's really different tools that do their respective things well.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. I wonder if that'll, like, a lot of people are kind of saying that, oh yeah, well, these tools will go away. We'll have maybe some backend stuff. Everything will be done through like a chat. But who knows? We'll see how things go. We'll see how innovative the space is after a few more years.
Right.
But kind of rolling on that, do you think there's a future where our work, Grid.io, ZenPilot, for consulting on these softwares is going to go away at some point? Is that ever feasibly going to happen?
Yeah. It could. I mean, not if we're good at trying to solve the end problem. Like at the end of the day, until it's all computers, like there's still going to be humans having human problems trying to solve it. But I don't see how, like a lot of the stuff that we've produced a ton of content at ZenPilot. Like we've put out there, hey, we have really focused in on a specific use case, a really specific market definition, a really specific platform that we're helping them with. And what that's done is a lot of the stuff that early on was super valuable to teams. Here's how you should name tasks and subtasks. Here's how you should think about organizing your teams and departments. That stuff today is less valuable because we don't do as much paid work to go solve that because we've given a lot of that stuff away in content. And the coolest thing about that then is that allows us to get clients not at like a level 1 or level 2 layer. Like we're now taking on clients at a level 4 or level 5 layer, and we can help them solve like the cooler stuff beyond that. So I think that'll just continue to happen. Like there's always going to be some edge to pursue. I don't see how that possibly goes away. So I'm sure what we do will have to, like, we've got to evolve it a little bit and figure out where we go. We've not leaned super hard into talking about AI super publicly. We probably should, but it just bothers me so much that it's like, we've added AI, so now we can have this extra SKU that we charge you double the price for or whatever. I'm all in on AI and where it's going. I just hate the buzz around it. And like, this is cover for us to go increase our ARPU as a software company. So
100%, I agree. It's like these companies are just like, oh, everybody's doing it. We have to do something with AI.
right.
Let's just throw something in there.
Yep.
And even looking at like Rovo and the AI tools in an Atlassian world, I mean, they're great. I don't know many companies that actually use them that much. And thankfully it's like now free and included, which is awesome. It's more consumption based, but still like the adoption for that isn't super high yet. Like every team that I work with, I jump in with, I make some recommendations and they're like, oh, what's Rovo? What is that? And it's been a year since they've launched it, a year and a half actually. So it's interesting to see these platforms. I just saw Notion do their AI release a little while ago. So I'm curious how, like, there's so many companies pushing for this, especially in this space. I'm curious how the adoption will be over time. Like, are people just going to gravitate towards ChatGPT and use that separately? Because there's so much innovation coming from them that these platforms have to like keep up with consistently. And it's really hard for them to do that. I just go directly to ChatGPT for most of my work. So kind of interesting to see that.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that all evolves. On the one hand, the outcomes that we get are going to get more and more valuable from it. And on the other hand, it's going to get cheaper and cheaper to run, and there's going to be competitive pressure from the market. I do think I have the same experience that you have, which is the minority of our clients today have actually signed on to buy ClickUp's AI, like full feature set. And I look at it and I'm like, this is crazy. I realize it can be expensive. You might pay another $30 a month per user, depending on like what you need and where pricing falls out. But like, if you have any kind of legitimate team, I mean, what do you like? You're paying for one extra hour of somebody's time. If you've got a really inexpensive employee, you're paying for, like an extra 15 minutes for a senior person worth of compared to labor. There's no way that you don't get better outcomes than that unless you're terrible at rolling it out. A big opportunity for you and for us. But people have a hard time getting over the sticker shock and the buying
I don't
process of it.
disagree. And we have that same problem with Rovo. And Atlassian is a VC-backed company. Like, their whole thing is they need to make money. And there's a lot of pressure from a lot of the investors in the company to do that. If Rovo was truly adopted and like made the money, they would have never made it free. So
Sure.
I look at that as like a prime case study of the biggest companies in the world that use Jira. Most Fortune 500 companies use Jira, over 300,000 teams. They would have never rolled this back and made it consumption based and free if it was widely adopted. So like, I think the sticker shock comes not from like the one user price, but from the whole company.
We have
Which
to
with
get everybody on it. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know how it is with ClickUp, but with Jira it was like, if you're using it, it's everyone or no one. And I think that's also kind of a big problem, because then you're swallowing a pill that's 100 seats, not a couple seats. And you're like, is everyone really going to use this? Is it worth buying? And someone could go to ChatGPT for free, use the free version if they need to here and there.
Right.
So that, I think, is where the big problem is.
Yeah. ClickUp's got the same model. I understand some of the complexities of saying, and even just like the challenge of onboarding, of saying like, hey, Josh has access to that feature. Why don't I have access to it? Well, we're not paying for it for you. Well, can we? Well, I don't know. Will you actually, like, I realize there's challenges associated with that. But yeah, it's like getting over that. It's either going to have to happen where the software providers create more flexibility or reduce the barrier to get folks in, or it could also happen the other way, which is just teams all get used to paying a little bit more for it and adopt. And so we'll see like which one gives when the immovable object meets this force.
I think we'll go to consumption based. That's my thought. Seeing like Atlassian and Jira do it. Like, there's a free tier, which is great. People use it. Once you use it more, it's like, okay, now you have to pay, which makes sense because then the people actually use it and they feel like it's actually valuable to them.
Right.
Like, even thinking of that $30 price tag, I'd be happy to pay more if I knew I was using more. But if it's flat $30 and I don't know, it's a little bit of a harder pill to swallow.
Yeah, it's a risk to take. I do think consumption gets, like, it's certainly the closest. I don't know if it's too complex for it to wind up taking off. That was like a lot of people tried value metrics that were too complex and had to dial back from it. I've certainly been guilty of that in the past. But consumption is certainly like the fairest model to roll it out. So it's the model I'd have a natural like tendency towards wanting to see adopted.
Mm-hmm. When I use these models, oftentimes I find that they're not powerful enough because they're limited by the tools that, or the companies that use them. Is that the same thing that you find with ClickUp?
You talking about AI specifically?
Yeah, like for example, if I'm trying to draft some content, I've used a few content drafting platforms that saved me some time by like running multiple batches of like prompts together. But the models were so much weaker than what's like, GPT 4.0 or whatever, or GPT-5 offers, that it wasn't even useful to me. And I had to just go back to ChatGPT. And kind of the same thing happens with Jira and, Rovo products. I'm curious if that's the same with ClickUp.
I have had that experience in the past. I haven't thought that probably in the past year, like ChatGPT 5 rolling out, and it's like 4 hours later that ClickUp has an email out saying, "Hey, this is plugged in here." And I'm always skeptical with that stuff. I'm like, is it really? Like, what's really running here? Is this a marketing thing? So I am that person who's often like, well, let me run prompts here, run prompts there, and it seemed very, like, the experience seemed like it was legitimately the new thing. So I think it's getting easier to catch up faster model wise. And it's probably largely a budget thing. Like, are we willing to go spend for it? That's a part of that too.
Yeah, I mean, the new models are always more expensive from OpenAI whenever they roll something out, and they can charge those prices because it, quote unquote, provides more value.
Right.
But it's interesting to look at, and it kind of reminds me of like USB-C and like the Thunderbolt 4 cables. It's like it's the same connector, but they do completely different things. And it's the same thing with AI, where you get a flavor of AI, but you don't really know what it is until you like actually use it and see if it's going to be relevant to you.
Right. Yeah, that's a good analogy.
What is something that you look at, maybe Jira or maybe another tool, and you're like, I wish that specific feature ClickUp had today?
Yeah. Notion synced blocks is probably a good example. I think Notion's definitely pushed the whole industry forward on docs more than anybody else. So that's one that I look at. I'd say most of my wish list, I don't know who's nailed it. Oh, the other thing, I mean, because we're working with professional service firms primarily, it is like the utilization and profitability reporting that everybody needs, that a ClickUp or a Jira or a Asana or Monday or Notion don't have because they're built way more general purpose than that. But industry specific tools, at least even if the implementation is not perfect of them, at least they have an implementation of that in like teamwork.com or a platform like that. We've built our own product to solve for that, but then it's like, hey, we're paying for 2 different softwares to do this. So that's one that I would love to see in there as well. And then I'd say most of the rest of the wish list is stuff that I'm like, hey, I'm not sure anyone solved this problem. I haven't found the folks who've solved this problem yet. But there's a lot of
What are
problems.
some of those? I'm curious.
So like all these tools have agents now, and can process whatever data. But like one of the things that we're working on building out right now is a model to get all your data collected. So ClickUp has the AI note taker. So like we should be able to take all your call transcripts, all your email history with a client or stakeholder, whoever you're working with, all your internal work metrics, and any other updates that you provide, and have like a coach basically to walk through. Like in our case, professional service firms, they all have these account managers, whatever they call that role. And there's a huge difference in client outcomes depending on the strength of an account manager. A junior account manager just miss a lot of stuff naturally that a senior account manager, if they're good, would know. Like Josh hasn't gotten back to me in a week. And if I'm junior, I'm like, this is awesome. He's leaving me alone. I've got time to go get my other work done. And if I'm experienced, I'm like, hey, that's at least a yellow flag. Like he may be checking out on this project or not seeing value, or he doesn't know, he's got an issue that he doesn't know how to express. And that's going to hold us back until we can get that out in the open and clear the air. So having like having all that data pulled in together, digested, and then coaching teams, giving them actual action items to like, hey, you may have missed, you said you were going to do this thing on this call transcript 2 weeks ago. I've never seen a task about it. I've never seen it mentioned again in an email. Like, did you drop the ball? Can we resurface that? It's all possible to do today. It's just like harder than it ought to be to string it all together today. If you're using ClickUp's AI note taker, then you've got all the docs that you can pull in from that with your transcripts. But unless you're logging all your emails into ClickUp, like you've got to connect that somehow. So it's just like today you've got to build a bunch of connections to try to build that stuff. I think that can get a lot easier and would be a huge win for a lot of our clients and for their clients too.
Yeah, makes sense. I've seen some of that with like maybe sales where a bot would listen to your sales call, doesn't have all that context outside of the call, but sort of trains you and coaches you like, hey, you should have done this, should have said this. It would be interesting. And I actually love the concept of having sort of like a virtual assistant with me at all times. And I'm just like talking into it, say, hey, I need this person to do this. I need this task created. Remind me to do this. And it just goes to Slack, sends that message, adds a task in my task manager tool, sends that email. That would be awesome. I've looked for it, but it doesn't exist yet. And I'd love to see that sometime soon.
Right. I think that's a great example. Yeah. Having like, here's all my context. Did you see Rewind, which is, have they rebranded? It was like capture your screen 24/7, listen to your audio. It might still be Rewind, but they've pivoted towards primarily one of the wearable devices that records everything. Yeah. But I used that for a little while. And the data going in was helpful. There were times where I'd scroll back and be like, what happened here? But the data coming back at it, like the coaching around it was the weak part. So it's like we're capturing all this data. That's great. Next step is like, how do we surface that as usefully as possible?
Mm-hmm. That's a good perspective. Yeah. Capturing is the easy part with most things. You obviously have to have like those integrations built out, but wearables are an interesting concept. I sometimes also think like, is that like, I remember the Humane AI pin, the Rabbit R1 completely flopped because they're just basically apps in another form factor. So I'm curious if like phones will do that in the future and just kind of have that context. I mean, Siri is always listening and those other products are always listening. So will they store that eventually and then just resurface that data? That'd be interesting to see.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Even that form factor, like, is it the phones that we're all used to carrying around? Is it glasses? Like what does that look like that we're ultimately?
Yeah. Can't wait for glasses. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
That's one thing I'm anticipating the most.
Yeah. I agree. I think there's so much potential there. So we'll see. I know a lot of people have tried it, but at some point it feels like someone's got to make this work.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to see because you kind of have like these assumptions in the tech world where it's like, oh yeah, this is the direction we're all heading in. And then out of nowhere, this innovation comes through and you're like, how did we not see this before? And everybody completely pivots overnight to something entirely different. So maybe that's going to be the thing with glasses. Everyone's like, oh, that's the next thing. And we never know. Maybe something else will come up tomorrow.
Yep. 100%. Definitely happen.
Yeah. Well, great. Thanks for being here. Appreciate your time. If people want to reach out, find out what you do, find out what ZenPilot does, how can they find you all?
Yeah. Easiest way is LinkedIn. I'm just Gray MacKenzie on LinkedIn or ZenPilot.com. And you can either chat to us through the site or go to ZenPilot.com/call and book a call. And happy to talk through and try to answer as honestly as possible. Hey, here's the things that Jira does well and would be an advantage. Here's the things that ClickUp does well and might be an advantage too. So I do think that if you look in our CRM at like deal closed, lost reasons, pointed to another PM tool is a pretty popular one. So I think there's like the short-term incentive of how do we get as many people to ClickUp as possible? And there's the long-term incentive of like, how do we get the right people where it's actually the right tool there so that they're not unhappy 6 months or a year down the line.
You want to actually solve the problem, not just provide a solution 100%. That you hope works.
Yep. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I always appreciate that. Having someone push you into something just to make some money is never someone I would want to trust. So that's a really good perspective to have.
Right. Yeah. Well, this was fun.
Awesome.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah. Thanks. Great for being here.